Welcome to yet another episode of English Speaking Made Easy. Here, as we've been doing for the past few episodes, the aim is to help you improve your language skills, a skill that is extremely important for you in life and at work. So let's move on to the segments for today. We're going to begin with our usual first segment, which is the Grammar Express. In this segment, I will be winding up on our area called pronouns. So I think in the previous two episodes, if you've noticed, we've been discussing the different kinds of pronouns, what confusions can arise in the use of pronouns. So today I'm going to wind up with the use of reciprocal pronouns, and I'm going to give you a little bit more on interrogative pronouns. In the last episode, we had discussed what interrogative pronouns were. We had discussed these words, these WH words, the words which are used to begin questions with, and simple to understand too. Those words like which, why, when, where, and even words like whoever, whatever, whenever, all these are interrogative pronouns. I hope you remember that from the last episode. Now what we are going to do is just give you a small idea regarding the confusion that is generally created when we use the pronouns who and whom. Often we notice that we tend to interchange both of this. So there is a certain pattern to it, and there's a certain logic you should use when you're putting a who and a whom, and I'm going to just slightly make it simpler for you here. We use who when we refer to the subject, and whom when it refers to the object. So when I say subject and object, now you might be confused. Now how do I decide if something is in the subjective case or in the objective case? Then what we should do is, if you have that problem, try substituting the word with these things, these kind of pronouns, personal pronouns like he or she and him or her. When you do that, if he or she fits the answer, then it has to be who. On the other hand, if him or her is what makes sense, then the answer should be, then your option should be whom. Just to keep this thing in mind, he or she, it will be who, him or her, it will be whom. Now you will have to tweak the sentence a little bit to apply these words, and we can explain that better with an example. Okay, let's see where we are going to use a who and where we are going to use a whom with an example. Now the first one, you have a sentence, okay, who ate my sandwich? Is that correct, or whom ate my sandwich? Now if you are slightly confused regarding which, whether it's who or whom, then try substituting he and she. He ate my sandwich. Does it sound good? Or she ate my sandwich. Does it sound good? Or does it sound good with her or him? Him ate my sandwich. Her ate my sandwich. Very clearly you realize that he and she fits perfectly there. So you know that the option you have to use is who and not whom. So now we look at another example. Who should I talk to about labeling food in the refrigerator? Who should I talk to about? Okay, we can leave the labeling. Who should I talk to about this? Or whom should I talk to about this? Should it be who or should it be whom? Now let's use our principle there. Let's first use he or him. Okay, if you put the word he, who should I talk to about this? Or who should I talk to about labeling things in the refrigerator? If you say I should talk to he regarding this, or is it I should talk to him? If you give that as an answer, which word fits in properly? Who should you? I should talk to he, or I should talk to him. Think about it. In this particular sentence, unlike the previous one, him comes in perfectly. So you know that it is not who, but it is whom. So so the sentence is not who should I talk to about, the sentence is whom should I talk to about labeling food in the refrigerator. See, so you slightly tweak it and then you get your answer. And this may seem like a small thing, but this is a common error which comes in. So all you need to do is, if you're confused about what's a subject, what's an object, just try replacing it. Just try tweaking the sentence, make it look like a statement, change the question into a statement perhaps. And then if you get the answer to come closest to him and her, put a whom. If the answer agrees more with he and she, put a who. That's about it. And if you look at the examples I've given you before, just play them in your mind and you will get your answer perfectly. Okay? And these are kind of tricky questions which often come for competitive exams. You know, when you have these grammar part and all that, in many schools also I've seen kids come for help with these kind of areas, because it's so difficult to understand whether to put a who and a whom, because in many instances both look highly probable. And when you speak, perhaps it gets leveled, but when you write, that becomes an error. So that's one particular area in interrogative pronouns that I want you to pay attention to. Okay. Now I'm moving on to the next pronoun, which is what we call the reciprocal pronoun. Now these pronouns, these reciprocal pronouns, they express mutual actions or relationships. That is something that is happening between two people, one another. Okay, something that is just reciprocated, one person to the other. That's what the meaning is also, no? Reciprocal, something which happens between two people, something which is mutual. Okay, and in English we just have two reciprocal pronouns. One is one another and each other. Like every other pronoun, if you've noticed that we've used, this pronoun also serves the purpose of unnecessary repetition in a sentence. One, it helps to prevent unnecessary repetition. Secondly, it also helps to drive down, to reinforce the idea that something collective, reciprocal or mutual, an action like this which affects more than one person, which actually has two people, is taking place. Okay. So the examples are a very simple one to understand also. I'll give you an example. John and Mary gave each other gifts. So we see the reciprocal pronoun there, each other. Now this reciprocal pronoun each other helps us to avoid repetition of those names once again, and also helps us to make the sentence more efficient. If we did not have a reciprocal pronoun, then the sentence would read like this: John gave Mary a gift and Mary gave John a gift. So that's so much of repetition, but that word each other helps to avoid that, makes a sentence lot more efficient. Okay? The countries worked with one another on national security. In this example also we use the word one another. This means they work together, it's a collective action. This suggests that something is being reciprocated. It's reciprocated between two people, more than one person. So this word also would help you to avoid repetition. So each other, one another. So this is what we call reciprocal pronouns. We have certain examples now in the sentences. You can just have a look at these examples and you can easily identify what they are. The boxers punched each other. That means there are two people, they punched each other, one reciprocated with the other. The couple love one another deeply. Two things happening between two people. So you see, these are some examples of reciprocal pronouns. So I suppose that's a simple one there, and because it's just about two pronouns, it is not very complicated also. But I also need you to remember one area I discussed before this, which is who and whom. Needs a little bit of thought, a little bit of practice, but it's good to correct it in your speaking and your writing. Okay. Now with that, we move on to our second segment, which is Lexica, your guide to good vocabulary. Each time I come to this segment, it gives me a high, because I think vocabulary is something that helps you express yourself, improves your vocabulary, and you know, it's something that you have to apply your mind when you want to learn. So what I do is I take different scenarios, different subjects, different areas, and I try to bring in vocabulary related to that. So, if you are keeping a log of what I am saying, you will be able to address a lot of topics with the kind of words we discuss here. Okay. So, today I am going to speak about advertising, the different means of advertising. So, if you know, we have advertisements on TV. When something comes on television, we refer to it as television commercials. I hate the commercial break. So, it is actually referred to, when you have an ad on TV, it is a television commercial, one way of advertising. Another way of advertising is, of course, through radio. You have radio advertising, you also have newspapers and magazine advertisements, and all these are targeted at a specific group of people, with magazine advertisements being brighter and more colorful than perhaps newspaper advertisements. Along with that, one word which we definitely use very wrongly is the word, what do you call, you see these large boards with some information about a product. You see them by the roadsides, you see them near stadiums or theatres or near or important places. Now, if you ask what these are not exactly, you do not call them flexes or flexboards, they are actually called billboards. Okay? Billboards are more popular, it is a more American usage. Billboards. Billboards means those boards in which advertisements are displayed. And a billboard is slightly different from what do you call a television ad, because there will only be a little bit of information. Okay, it's got a limited information and it's targeted and it will be put up in a very prominent place. Now, the British do not refer to it as billboards, the British refer to it as hoardings. So, for the British, that kind of advertising is referred to as an hoarding. Americans refer to it as a billboard. Okay. So, these are some kinds of most popular conventional means of advertising. Now, we do have a lot of new means of advertising, a lot of ways in which people advertise other things. I will give you an example of another conventional form of advertising. This is perhaps very, very common. They are called flyers. And you know what a flyer is, don't you? Just like we have a brochure which contains information, a flyer will also have information about a thing. It could be a product, it could be a shop, it could be about anything, but a flyer is a small piece of paper printed and it is distributed at select places. Sometimes they also come in between our newspapers, and we call them newspaper inserts, not newspaper advertisements, but they are put inside our newspapers and they are called newspaper inserts. Okay. Now, with the advent of the internet, now we have a lot of advertising targeted on that. One is what we call an internet pop-up. An internet pop-up is, if just imagine you are googling for some information or you are reading something, all of a sudden you see an advertisement pop up. It is quite an irritant in between that process, but this advertisement which pops up is quite effective primarily because it also leads you directly to the seller. If you click on it, you can go directly to the seller. So, the access wise, so you see a pop-up ad. And when you see that pop-up ad, you feel like, okay, fine, I think this product is interesting. And then that ad will have a link which leads you directly to the seller. So, that way it is a very effective means of advertising. So, we have pop-up ads, and now in between programs on YouTube also you have a lot of ads coming in. So, these are all internet based ads. Another one is something what we call email marketing. Email marketing works when the person or the organization which sends the email has a good pool of a good client pool. Then what they do is, depending on your interests or something you have seen on Facebook or on social media, they get your email ID and they send you they send you notifications, they send you about your offers or things like that. It's called email advertising, and email advertisements are very cheap, and as long as it's actually cheaper, and it's targeted at a particular group of customers whom they are sure would enjoy the product. So, you have email advertising, you have internet pop-ups, you have advertisements coming in between programs on YouTube. These are all more modern ways of advertising. when you want to advertise something, you also try out different means in which you can attract people. Sometimes you rope in a celebrity, some famous person who comes in to speak about the product, and that has a huge draw, because if you are a fan of that particular celebrity, there's a very high chance you would be hooked on to the advertisement and finally to the product also. That particular process of bringing in celebrities for your program, that is called a celebrity endorsement. So when someone, so you know Sachin Tendulkar, he endorses the brand called Boost. You know, that's a celebrity endorsement that he does. So it's called celebrity endorsements. When you're speaking, you say celebrity endorsements are a great way to help to hook on to young fans who love to try out the product recommended by their favorite stars. So you have something called celebrity endorsements. Okay, so these are all different kinds of marketing tools and they are all used very effectively. Now I want to also tell you about something called telemarketing. Now telemarketing is similar to email marketing, except that here they call you on your phone. So it's going to be very annoying, because you might be in the midst of something when you get someone calling you regarding a certain product. Banks do it all the time. And that process of making those calls is called cold calling, C-O-L-D, cold calling. Cold calling is a way by which they get direct, the retailers or the person concerned gets direct contact with the customer. But here what happens is the information, the calls are what we call unsolicited, which means the person at the other end hasn't asked for the call. This is something that they feel is a need and they call you otherwise. So it's called cold calling. Many people don't entertain cold calls at all. That's another form of marketing. It's called cold calling or telemarketing. Okay, so this is one other way in which people tend to market their products. So I hope you've got the entire list of words that we could use to market or to advertise products, and most of these are common ways. We are getting new ways coming in with artificial intelligence and all being very much in demand. I think anything you search for on YouTube, the next day you get suggestions in your when you're tuning into the channel. And if you're on Facebook, if you've checked out one particular product, means the next day you get lots of product suggestions related to that. So here they are narrowing it down to artificial intelligence or what the customer needs. So in future, advertising is going to be targeted at specific customers. Niche marketing is going to be the most sought after thing. Okay, so on this note, we come to an end of advertising and the means by which you can advertise. Okay, so with this, we move on to our third segment. Our third segment is Say It Right, your guide to good pronunciation. Here I have chosen a few words. That's what I do every time. I choose a few words that may be wrongly pronounced by you, and then I help you correct those errors so that you can sound right. Okay, so there's one very popular drug. It is used both for medicinal purposes as well as otherwise, and it's a very common name we hear, and that's spelt M-A-R-I-J-U-A-N-A. Because we have the J there, most people tend to pronounce it as marijuana. But that pronunciation is not right. The J is not pronounced there. So it's marijuana. It's not marijuana. The J is not pronounced there. It's marijuana. Okay, that's one. Secondly is the word D-E-T-E-R-M-I-N-E. There are many people who pronounce it as determine. The right pronunciation is determine. You need to determine if this is right or wrong. It's not determine if this is right or wrong. Okay. The next word which creates a problem, and a word which we all generally use, is the word R-E-S-U-M-E. Now this word R-E-S-U-M-E has a verb, it's both a verb sound as well as a noun. As a verb and as a noun, this word has two different meanings, two different pronunciations. Okay, if you just imagine activity is in progress, then that activity stops and then it restarts. So you say it is resuming. resuming. Okay, R-E-S-U-M-E. And the sound there is Z. Something has stopped and it is resuming. That is a verb. On the other hand, as a noun, it refers to something like a biodata, something where you write your qualifications, your previous job, work experience, your personal details, and you give it over to a prospective employer. That is resume. It's not resume, it is resume. The other one is resume. Okay, this one is resume. And this means it's a noun which refers to that one thing. So, it's a similar sounding word, but two different meanings and two different pronunciations. Okay. Now, another word is a very common thing that you see nowadays. I think all of you youngsters would be familiar with that word, M-E-M-E. You see it written down, but how do you pronounce it? Is it, it's not mimi, it's meme. Okay, it's called a meme. You know, a meme is like a funny thing that is used. You see a lot of memes used on social media these days also, and it's pronounced meme, not mimi. Okay, it's meme. So, that's the pronunciation of that word. So, with that, we come to an end of our section where we help you to correct your pronunciation. Now, let's move on to our last segment for today. This is Let's Talk, your guide to good conversation. And the purpose of this particular segment is to help you refine the way you speak, give you tips, give you sentence structures that can help, that you can use in your daily life. So, last episode, if you remember, we had discussed about certain phrases related to asking directions. We had spoken about imperative things. When someone asks you where you go, where they need to go, or they ask you directions to a particular place, you use simple expressions. We call them imperative sentences. We tell them go right, turn left, take the next turn. You know, then you'll find a shop round the corner. The building is just opposite to the post office. So, we use these kind of expressions to help people, to help guide people, and we always use, these are called imperative sentences. This is what we use when we give instructions. Along with that, you would also ask questions. Could you tell me how far? You can use questions beginning with how. How far is the museum from here? How close is it to the theatre? So, you can use how to ask questions also. So, we discussed a lot of these expressions last time, and I had mentioned that what we are going to do is integrate all of them, or take a few of them and build a dialogue, because that is the ultimate purpose of those expressions, to see how we can use it to strike a conversation with someone who would like to know, who asks us for directions. So, that is what we are going to do right now. In the conversation today, what we are going to do in our practice session is, there is a person who is asking someone for directions to a museum. Okay? So, we have two people in conversation at a street corner. Now, there is a tourist. Tourist asks, excuse me, can you help me? I think I am lost. And the person who helps him says, certainly, where would you like to go? He asks him, where would you like to go? And the tourist says, I'd like to go to the museum, but I can't find it. Is it far off? And the person says, no, not really. It's about a 5-minute walk. Okay? No, not really. Someone asks you, is that very expensive? No, not really. The response, it's a 5-minute walk. The tourist says, maybe I should call a taxi. When he says, maybe I should call a taxi, what he is actually implying is, do you think I should call a taxi? And the person says, no, it's very easy. Really, you can, I can give you the directions. So, he says, no, there is no need for a taxi. No, it's very easy. It's very easy really. I can give you the directions. And the tourist is very thankful. He says, thank you. That's very kind of you. Look at the expression, thank you. That's very kind of you. That's very kind of you to help me. And the person says, oh, not at all. And so he says, now look at the directions he is giving. This is what you need to remember from the last episode. The last time, the imperative directions he gives. He says, now go along the street to the traffic lights. Do you see them? And the tourist says, yes, I can see them. He says, yeah. Now at the traffic lights, turn right at the traffic lights, take a right from there, then turn left into Queen's Avenue. Okay, so you see how he's turn right, take a right from the traffic lights and turn left into Queen's Avenue. Okay, and the tourist confirms, okay, Queen's Avenue. And then the person says, right on, go straight and then take the second left and you will see the General Post Office. So you see how the directions are given. Take the second left and you will see the General Post Office. Whenever we give directions, we often have landmarks, places which are prominent, which helps the other person quickly understand where he is. So you reach the post office. The tourist says, okay. So he is repeating the directions just to make sure. He says, okay, Queen Street, straight on, and then third left, and then I reach the General Post Office. And the person says, no, it's the second left. It's not the third left, it's the second left. The tourist, right, the second street on my left. And then the person tells him, right, just follow the sign that leads to the museum right after the post office, and the museum is at the end of the road. The tourist says, great, thanks again for your help. And the person says, not at all. And that's his response, not at all, that's fine. So this is how the conversation ends. So you've seen how they began with imperative sentences. They don't go on into proper polite expressions there, because that's not how we give instructions or we give directions. Imperative, go straight, turn right, and then you see as this goes on, you see him asking a lot of questions and you see the tourist being very polite in answering, the person there helping him to find his way there. Okay, so this is how we generally give directions in English, and I hope you've picked up a few phrases. It's a very simple conversation too. So I hope you found this episode useful too, and we'll meet you again with a nice brand new episode of English Speaking Made Easy. Till then, goodbye.